I arrive at amber orbit smelling like recycled mint and copper. The station's banners say peace in 8 alphabets. The security drones say otherwise. I'm an observer diplomat now. Same boots, different lies. I keep my shoulders square and my smile disposable as the crowd flows around me. Delegates in living silk, miners in scarred workskins, a monk with a fiber-optic rosary looping his wrist like a tame comet. The atrium hums with a polite panic only money can keep pretty. My badge pings each archway. The archways ping me back, counting bones. 3 corridors past docking rings, see? The lights die. No warning. The station exhales, and then blackout, followed by the clunk of emergency doors dropping from ceiling slots like steel eyelids. Instinct is faster than memory. I plant my feet, palm to the sidearm I'm officially not carrying, ears searching for footsteps that don't match the rhythm of a crowd. Somewhere air pumps deepen, metal speaks to metal in low, patient groans. The skin on my forearms lifts as pressure equalizes. That's when she stumbles into me. A body collides with my chest. Warm. Lighter than the cloak suggests. My hand finds a hand through a thin glove. Her weight tips. I anchor. Somewhere a pressure seal hisses shut, and the world narrows to an airlock ribbed with hazard chevrons that glow like embers. The door seals us into a box the size of 2 breaths. Careful, she whispers. Her voice is smooth, not soft, trained to leave no aftertaste. But the word trembles in the tiny space between us. Backup strips flicker to life, flooding the chamber in honeyed dusk. I take in a face I've only seen in streams. Lyra Vey, Dominion air, the future wrapped in a dark cloak and a collar that could pass for a crown. Her hair is pinned like a command. Her gaze is an audit with teeth. And I am steady. I'm steady because someone has to be. Apologies, Hi. The title hits my tongue and slides off, useless in this tight box. She laughs. Quick. Surprised. Human. The wall speaker chirps an instruction that sounds like a lullaby for machines. Emergency protocol active. 10 minutes. Remain calm. Far away, officials will be fretting about optics. Closer, our chests find a similar pace. Her glove creaks faintly against my jacket as she rebalances, not quite pulling free. Observer. Mark Hayes, isn't it? She says, looking up as if light should kneel. You do your briefings, I answer. I write them, she says, and the corner of her mouth tilts like a blade discovering it can smile. We shift into the polite geometry of strangers, sharing a too small space. I straighten her cloak where it bunched at her hip, and I'm aware of how ridiculous that is. An infantryman smoothing royalty in half-light. I expect a flinch, a reprimand, some hierarchic reflex. Instead, she holds still, allows the correction, allows me. I'm supposed to say something graceful, I tell her. But the floor just moved, and you almost headbutted me, so graceful is late. That was not a headbutt, she counters. It was a low-orbit nudge. A beat. Our breaths braid. The air tastes ionized, like a thunderstorm that forgot rain. Favorite drink? She asks. I blink. We're doing icebreakers in a box? Emergency doors, she says, gesturing at the metal inches from my ear. Emergency conversation. Your file reads, cooperative under stress. I'm testing it. Vanilla coffee, I say. Hot. Ugly sweet. You? Bitter citrus, the kind that burns the tongue a little. I nod as if that explains the line of her shoulders. Maybe it does. Childhood fear? She presses, eyes on mine like sensors. The barracks darkness, I hear myself say. When the generator failed and the boys turned into breathing furniture. I taste the old iron. You? She pauses. Not a failure, a calculation. The deep ocean, she admits. a black that swallows light and keeps it. I imagine her on some dominion world with seas like mouths. I imagine her refusing to be swallowed. It's a foolish image. I keep it anyway. The intercom hums to life, static like crushed ice. Remain calm, as if the room can hear us trying. Her fingers hover near my face, not touching. Then, like a medic evaluating a concussion, she tilts my chin toward the amber strip. The glove is smooth, cooled by good equipment. She studies my pupils with an intensity that would read as clinical, if not for the small hitch in her breath, the sound of gravity appearing where there shouldn't be any. You held me very steadily, she says, voice threaded through control. You're lighter than you look, I answer, before the diplomatic part of my brain can stage a coup. Silence, but not the empty kind, the kind that fills until it changes shape. The station thrums underfoot, a giant animal rediscovering pulse. Her gaze flicks to my mouth and back with professional precision, as if she's cutting a wire in her head. Observer diplomat, she says, testing the title on me the way I tested her name. You were infantry. Once, I say. For how long? Long enough to learn that protocols are good at saving faces, I tell her. People do better with hands. Her eyes soften, then sharpen. The transition is a skill, not a mood. And yet you're here to shake hands with the people who write protocols. We all need hobbies. She almost smiles. Almost. What did you observe, Mark Hayes, before you were paid to observe? Corners, exits, lies that prefer elevators, men who look at ceilings when they tell the truth. I let a breath go. You? Time, she says. How it bends when you tell it what to do. We talk small to survive the big. Food carts on the night side promenade. Hers, a chef who slaps noodles like percussion. Mine, a steam bun stall that burns your fingers. The rain from the station's scrubbers that falls on schedule like a clock crying. The way the living glass in the atrium pretends it isn't watching. She asks if I ever get used to cameras. I say you don't. You decide where to look instead. She asks where I look. I say, at the person who might fall. Her throat shifts as she swallows. A fragile human movement. A tiny rebellion against being a symbol to herself. Somewhere beyond the door, the summit unspools. Translators flexing tongues. Sponsors practicing smiles. Soldiers rehearsing neutrality. In here, two people, one box, and a quiet that refuses to be empty. Your eyes track, she says after a while, clinical again. You map spaces. Habit. And people? Also habit. I consider telling her she's already rewritten my map. I don't. The doors sigh, preparing to wake. Amber brightens toward white. Schedules twitch back to life. The world knocks, patient and insistent. Lyra's palm lingers near mine, the glove an unnecessary treaty between temperatures that want a truce. She tilts in again. The excuse remains. Stress check, pupil response, any of 100 masks for curiosity. Mark, she says, without title, testing first names like she's testing a bridge. Thank you. I should respond with, of course, I don't. Anytime. The interlock chime trills. The seal releases. Air rushes like applause held too long. We step apart the way trained people do. On cue, with dignity. As if nothing was exchanged beyond oxygen. Her cloak settles over her shoulders like night falling all at once. An adjutant in a dark suit ghosts up, already speaking. I fade into the corridor's flow like a soldier pretending to be furniture again. But the warmth from her glove stays in my palm, as if the door hadn't opened, as if we were still caught in the same breath. And I recognize, with the sharp clarity you only get when the lights return, that chance is what we call it, when we don't want to pay for the truth, that something shifted, deliberate as a hand, choosing where to land. Evening dresses the station in expensive light. The atrium is a bowl of living glass, petals of engineered leaves opening and closing with the room's breath. The glass remembers the day's conversations and simmers with colors like afterthoughts. Sponsors hover by the drink arrays, pretending not to count cameras. I'm a polite shadow on the periphery, badge out, smile leashed, scouting exits like I'm memorizing hymns. Lyra arrives late enough to be a statement. Cloak like rainfall, collar like a verdict. She doesn't turn her head to find me, and still her gaze grazes where I'm stationed near a support vine. The Dominion cluster around her, men who speak in bullets disguised as syllables. She moves through them as if gravity bends to her schedule. In a way, it does. I tell myself to look away. I don't. The living glass ceiling ripples to mimic a night sky none of us can afford to see from groundside anymore. There's a snowstorm of ships outside, tiny drives glinting. Waiters drift with trays of drinks whose colors make promises. I choose vanilla coffee from a side console meant for staff and pretend it's a diplomatic gesture. She takes a flute of something clear with a shard of rinded orange glowing like a signal. Bitter citrus, she said. The memory warms my chest, then cools it. I monitor the room's rhythm. Music threads underneath like a silk wire. Speeches blur at the edges. The first wobble is small. I catch it because I make a living catching the wrong kind of movement. Lyra's shoulder dips, then rights itself. Dominion's smiles tighten into identical parentheses. I'm moving before I decide to. Old training, new context. By the time the second wobble whispers up her spine, I'm behind her, not touching, close enough to smell salt and metal under perfume. She brings the glass to her lips for another dutiful sip, and I see it. The faint drag in her pupils, the blink that takes one heartbeat too long. A trace neurotoxin loves tiny doses and public rooms. I step into her fall like I rehearsed it with the airlock. My hand finds her upper arm. My other palm catches the small of her back through cloak. Heat meeting heat. We are a shape in 1,000 lenses. My voice drops to the pitch only people and wolves hear. Easy. Breathe. For a fraction of a second, her body locks in the old code. Don't yield. Then trust. Reluctant as dawn. Cracks through. She lets her weight tilt into me. Not much. Enough. I thumb the clasp on my belt pouch and slide out the injector a friend smuggled through customs for me with a wink and an invoice. I pressure it against the seam of her shoulder where cloak meets skin. Cameras bloom like algae. I angle my body, hug her close, block the shot with the bored curve of a man comforting a fainting partner. The needle kisses through fabric with a sound only I hear. The antidote hums into muscle. The glass flute tilts precariously, and I take it, setting it on a plantar lip where vines sip condensation like tea. Her chill is immediate and brief, a tremor through bone. Heat follows, a tide rolling up the coast of her. I feel it because my hands are there. I shouldn't keep them there. I do. She blinks and steadies. The Dominion men finally move, coordinated concern clicking on with enviable latency. Her adjutant forms a sentence that never becomes words. I'm fine, Lyra says, voice firm enough to hold a bridge. Observer haze prevented a very boring fall. Eyes flit between us. Some measure angles. How close? How long? Others calculate liability. No one asks to see my injector. Enough of them have their own. To wash the moment's glare, she smiles in a way that says she is in charge of the narrative. Walk? She asks me, already turning. Balcony. I need air that hasn't been explained to. The observation balcony is a long lip of glass and steel over the station's city of lights. Below, service scooters stitch neon lines between modules. Above, ships drift like snow caught in a street lamp. A charcoal wind brushes our faces, the kind that smells faintly of cooling engines. She leans into the rail, breathes once like a swimmer surfacing, then twice, returning to speed. I told them I didn't need a keeper, she says, without looking at me. You don't, I say. You needed 10 milligrams of honor among thieves. She glances sideways, amused despite herself. And a steady hand. I heard that about myself, I say, from a source I trust. Her gloves are off now, tucked into her belt. A choice, not a lapse. The air bites her fingers pink. She insists she doesn't need protection by doing nothing to get warm. I move closer, palms up, and she lets me take her hands. My breath fogs. Her skin is cool with the last of the toxin. Then warmer. Then warm. Pulse flicking under my thumbs. We stand like that, ridiculous and careful. Two figures in expensive cold, pretending not to be what we are. You tracked the line of my back in the glass, she says lightly, as if remarking on weather. Reflex, I say. Mapping exits, she says. And obstacles, I say, watching her mouth forget to be royal for half a second. She studies me, pupils steady now, the dilation reserved for other kinds of trouble. Say my name again. Lyra. The wind edits our conversation into shorter sentences. Her cloak's hem lifts and falls like a heartbeat you can see. We talk about small things, because the big things are loud enough without us. She confesses a childhood memory of practicing speeches to empty chairs. I admit I used to sand the grips of my rifle for luck, until a sergeant told me luck hates attention. She calls me superstitious. I call her brave. Both of us are lying a little. I return her hands reluctantly. The glass rail shows us as outlines stitched to stars. The living glass behind us reflects another angle. Two people arranged like a paused dance. She steps closer, not quite touching, and every nerve I own writes poetry I don't approve. I don't need protection, she says again, softer. It's an assurance from microphones that might be listening. Her eyes, for once, are speaking to me instead of to history. I know, I say. Let me be selfish then. How? By standing here. She laughs under her breath. Adult gravity snaps our sentences in half. No one kisses anyone. We make smaller, truer choices. Her fingertips touch my collarbone, a test of balance. Mine brush the inside of her wrist, where her pulse beats like a wild bird settling. The world compresses to a lens aperture narrowing, all light focused on us, until we could burn. Side effect, I murmur, almost to myself. Of the antidote? She asks. Of the day, I say. We linger until the cold claims victory. She pulls her gloves back on with the efficiency of a woman who owns time. I check the balcony cameras out of habit. One is conveniently angled toward the ceiling. I don't look too long at that kindness. When we re-enter the atrium, the music has learned our absence and filled it. She walks at my shoulder, not in front, not behind. The Dominion orbit shortens. Staff tug at her with scheduled duties. Before she steps back into the theater, she pauses. A breath. A private calibration. Thank you, she says, and it carries everything the airlock didn't have room for. Any time, I tell her, steady because someone has to be. Then we go different directions, which is a lie the room needs to believe. I find my corner and my coffee, and the nearest door that opens to the long spine of the station. My skin buzzes with the echo of her pulse where it met my fingers. Later, much later, when the crowd thins and the living glass dims to something like a thoughtful dark, my comm pings. Encrypted. A frequency no one should have. A message that chooses to be simple. Need to talk. Off protocol. I look toward the balcony as if the word itself might be waiting there. My shoulder rolls, an old ache anticipating new weather. I send 3 words in return that feel like stepping onto a moving train. Name the place. Her reply is immediate, as if she wrote it hours ago and let it hover until I earned it. Service dome atop comm sector. Warm. Loud. Alone. The service dome sits like a steel blister at the top of the comm sector, patched with old insulation that looks like the bark of a silver tree. I badge past 2 sleepy mechs and a sign that reads, "Authorized hum only." The O long faded, which makes the whole thing feel more honest. Heat radiates from antique fins along the wall. The air smells like ozone, metal, and a sweet tang of coolant that reminds me of a summer garage with the door half open. Station noise thrums through the girders. Crosstalk, dish spin, heartbeat. She's already there. Boots off. Cloak half draped over a coil of cable like she planned for interruptions and chose not to care. A maintenance lantern glows between us. Her hair looks less like a command and more like a woman forgot to polish it. The effect is criminal. "I picked this because the radiators drown microphones," she says, wiggling her toes toward the heat. "And because it's ugly. No one expects royalty in ugly." "Observer diplomat thrives on ugly," I say, toeing off my boots in solidarity. The grate underneath is warm enough to make my bones forgive all my choices. For a moment, we don't speak. We let the room inspect us, decide we're only human, then look away. She passes me a dented thermos. Bitter citrus vapor coils up. I taste it and wince. She smiles, mean and kind at once, then sips vanilla coffee from a throwaway cup she stole for the symmetry of it. "Off protocol," she says, more to herself than me. The lantern ticks. The station sighs. Her eyes go somewhere far, then snap back. "They're going to ruin the summit on purpose." I wait. The dome hums. A small moth made of dust hovers by the light and doesn't land. "False flag," she says. "Radicals from the fringe will be cast as authors. Dominion assets will arm them with a bomb we own. The blast was scheduled for the main plaza tomorrow. Enough noise for a lifetime of fear, neat casualty bands, beautiful outrage. And then, reconciliation on our terms. We will mourn. We will control. I am the face who should survive by miracle, a proof that protocol protects what it values." My jaw cracks and closes, and the fringe takes the stain forever. "That is the point," she says. "We keep peace by cutting everyone else's throat with their own names." She doesn't cry. She doesn't clench a fist. She unwraps a truth like someone who has finally decided to breathe unfiltered air. "Why tell me?" I ask. It is too small a question. It is the only one that fits out of my mouth. "Because you held me," she says. "Because you watched for my fall instead of your camera. Because you'll appreciate this. I do not like being used as a prop in a sermon about mercy." "Who signed it?" I ask. She leans forward, voice lower, consonants clean as glass. "My curator. The woman who raised and corrected me. The one who measures me for the role called air and for the cage the role requires. She calls it a protective proof. She calls me a compelling narrative. She is almost right. And if I vanish, there's a secondary plan. An alliance marriage to secure the optics of unity. A contract dressed as a vow. If I resist, my memory becomes a clean slate. My future reloaded by someone else's thumb. The heat suddenly feels like fever. I rub a thumb across the rim of her cup, a nothing gesture, a map of where courage meets shaking. "My assignment had a last option," I say. My voice feels like rust. "If I found the Dominion air complicit, if you, were part of an attack on civilians, I was authorized to prevent future harm. Permanently." She doesn't recoil. She takes that word like she takes bitter citrus. Eyes steady, mouth brave. "Was?" "Past tense," I tell her. "You're not complicit. You're the target and the alibi, the weapon and the wound, if they get their way." "What do you choose, Mark?" she asks. "Protocol or people?" "You," I say. I don't plan it. The word just discovers it's allowed. I choose you, and then we figure out how to choose the rest. She stands, bare feet on the warm grate, a queen stepping off a stage to touch floor. She puts her palm to my chest, like a scanner searching for contraband. My heart knocks at her hand and refuses to hide. "You're not a killer, Mark," she says. "You're a choice." I laugh once, tired and grateful. "And you're the reason." We close the distance like a truce negotiated by bodies first. Our foreheads meet. We share air. Nothing else moves for a long beat. The room's hum widens, then falls away, then returns as a friend who knows when to be quiet. Her fingers thread with mine, careful, deliberate. I feel the exact moment she lets weight transfer, not enough to need me, enough to admit she wants to. "Say it again," she whispers. "I choose you," I tell her, slower now, so the words land where they won't break. We kiss like we've been stepping toward it all day, which we have. Not rushed, not stolen, agreed upon. A decision that understands consequences and signs anyway. Her cloak slides from one shoulder, a breath of fabric and heat. My hands frame the line of her back and stop where yes becomes more than yes. She smiles against my mouth for that mercy. I smile for the same reason. We don't cross the line. We redraw it closer. We lie back on the warm grate, shoulder to shoulder, laughing once when a bolt prints its shape through my shirt. She tucks hair behind her ear, and I help, slow enough to memorize the path. Her toes touch my calf like punctuation. The lantern hums. Outside, a dish tracks some distant whisper. Inside, we learn to speak quiet. "I was raised to buy warmth," she says. "To order it, really. To reward it when it obeyed. It never stayed. It doesn't obey here." "What do you want it to do?" I ask. "Return," she says. "On its own." "It will," I tell her, and mean it, which scares me more than guns ever did. We trade histories in pieces, like smugglers swapping codes. She admits she once practiced a condolence speech in a mirror for children who didn't yet exist. I confess I still count steps between exits in my sleep. She tells me her curator taught discipline by offering praise with a timer. I tell her my sergeant taught love by handing me his only dry socks in a storm. We build a third language between those two women and those two men. Not command, not obedience, but kept promises. "When this detonates," she says, staring at the dome's ribs, "they'll call me home for correction. They'll dangle safety like a prayer. They'll ask me to prove loyalty by ceasing to be myself. They'll have to catch you first," I say. "They'll have to get through me." It sounds foolish. It sounds correct. "I hate that you make that sound like weather," she murmurs, and then she turns her face toward mine and kisses me again. Shorter, fiercer, like a signature. We get up slowly, not because we're finished, but because we can't afford not to be ready. She collects her boots. I lace mine. We check the door without stepping toward it. All our movements become practice for the morning. She hands me a thin wafer of living glass. "Handler links," she says. "Signatures. Slush caches. You won't be able to access most of it from here. But if we live through tomorrow, we will," I interrupt. "We'll make the lie explode into documents." Her smile is the kind given at the end of a hard bargain. "You talk like a soldier who learned to be a clerk." "I learned forms can win wars," I say. "So can love. But let's start with forms." Heat rises, then breaks. The lantern ticks. We stand close without needing to touch, which feels louder than touching. I tuck the wafer inside my jacket, over the ache of an old scar where a bullet once argued with my future, and lost. She walks me to the hatch and doesn't open it. The moment hangs. I let it. "If tomorrow gets scary," she whispers, voice gone all breath and courage, "look at me like this again." I lift a hand, cup her jaw, anchor us once more to the choice we made on a grate in an ugly room. I'll do more, I say. Then we have a plan, she answers. The hatch unseals with a sigh like surrender, learning it can also be relief. We step into the corridor separately, which is the lie the station needs to keep breathing for one more night. Behind us, the dome keeps our heat, hoarding it like a secret the morning will try to spend. Morning detonates in sirens, not the neat rehearsed kind, but the old animal wail that cuts through metal and prayer. I'm already moving when the lights strobe to blood. The plaza's feeds blare speeches that haven't happened yet. Schedules snarl. Doors argue with orders. Lyra is supposed to cross the main plaza in 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Smile calibrated to reassure investors and orphans. She is supposed to survive by miracle. I shoulder through a river of staff and watchers, the smell of stress like hot coins, and hit the service lifts just as her adjutant reaches for her arm with a hand trained to look gentle. Change, I say. Now. Her eyes meet mine over the adjutant's attempt at decorum. She doesn't ask for proof. She steps into the lift. I slam the manual close. We drop through the station's spine, lights blurring into a single scream of color. The trigger's live, she says, already pulling up an overlay on her sleeve. Thermal signatures bloom across the plaza like a bad rash. Blast set under the stage scaffolds, shaped upward, then outward. Minimum casualties if everyone obeys. Maximum story. We're going to ruin their story, I tell her. We exit into Level H, a corridor that smells like burned dust and old pride. Thermal shafts run here, fat insulated arteries venting heat from the summit's theatrical lights. One grate is loose. Lyra pries it with a maintenance key I didn't see her steal. We slip into a red-lit throat that wants to cough us back out. Left, she says. Past 2 junctions. The node that feeds the plaza rigs is 3 turns, and a bad idea from here. We army crawl through heat that makes my eyes water. Sweat brines the wire mesh under my palms. The shaft hums like a hive. Fans kick on in blasts that want to peel us backward. Lyra moves like someone who once learned a station's anatomy as bedtime stories. I follow, counting beats, listening for feet that don't belong to us. Above us, the ceremony begins without us. A voice opines about horizons. The crowd cheers on cue. My shoulder remembers a different morning where a street cracked open, and I learned what bodies do when plans become air. I shove the memory down the throat of the next second. We drop into a maintenance bay. No cameras here, only the smell of overheating promises. 2 shock troopers sweep in from a stairwell, visor glass, crisp weapons, the Dominion's idea of friendly. They expect frightened technicians. They get my elbow in one throat and Lyra's boot hooking an ankle cleanly enough to be tender. We leave them snoring among mops. Up, she says. The node is a pillbox of cables and stubborn software. The plaza's holographic rigs root through here. They chew data like religion and exhale light that can erase whatever daylight says. Lyra cracks a panel with 3 ruthless gestures and feeds it a seed from the living glass wafer she gave me last night. Can you divert the blast? I ask, watching digits race like ants. I can persuade the plaza to be somewhere else, she says. If I draw the overpressure into the rigs and flood the whole scene with solid holography, the blast meets its own light. We get noise, smoke, spectacle, and a rainstorm of documents instead of shrapnel. Do it. She does. Her mouth is a straight line you could sail by. The rigs cough, stall, reload with a new gospel. The plaza below us blooms, not with fire, but with paper. Sealed memos unfurl in midair. Handler links tangle like constellations. Signatures shine like fish bones in the sun. Slush caches glitter as numbers people never admit to knowing. The crowd stills the way flocks do when the hawk finally shows itself. Security splits. Some bark orders that contradict each other. Some lower weapons, as if they suddenly weigh truth. Lyra watches the chaos with a quiet I only recognize later as grief. "They will mark me traitor," she says. "They already did," I answer, because honesty is the only bridge we can cross fast. A glint turns on the hollow's skin. Wrong angle, wrong kindness. The roofline across the plaza offers a tiny mirrored tooth. I don't think. I move. My shoulder finds her shoulder. My back becomes a plate. The round hammers into the composite with a sound that pushes the world sideways. Pain blooms like hot paint. I drag her behind a column just in time for the second shot to lick the stone where her spine was practicing tomorrow. Her pupils are black planets. "Mark, I'm here." I put pressure where the heat argues. It's a bruise, a bite, an invoice. I can pay it later. We need an exit. "There's no path back to normal," she says, not as despair, as logistics. "Good," I say. "Normal is the cage." One option remains. A smuggler's shuttle sits in the lower dock on a schedule no one admits exists. I know the pilot. He once owed me for a box of illegal oranges in a famine. Debts age oddly. Some get sweeter. I open a comm channel I shouldn't have and speak a name that tastes like dust and luck. He replies with a swear and a docking code. "Lower dock?" she asks. "Catwalks," I say. "Searchlights, bad angles. We run." We run. Up the service stair where two more troopers appear like punctuation. Lyra blinds one with a thrown maintenance tag that screams in the visor. I slide under the other's barrel and take his knee out of the story. We slam through a door into a catwalk framed by hungry air. Below, the plaza is a blizzard of evidence. Above, lights carve us into targets. Shouts chase our backs. The station's lungs heave. "You're bleeding," she says. "Later," I say. "Always. Later," she snaps, and I love her with a ferocity that makes my steps smarter. We cross the last span. A searchlight pins us. For a heartbeat, we are specimens held to gravity with nails. Lyra rips a flare from an emergency box and strikes it against the rail. It ignites into a sun that doesn't care about permission. She hurls it into the light's mouth. White blooms with red. The beam swallows itself and coughs out blindness in all directions. We drop to the lower deck. The smuggler's hatch is a grin I would punch if it weren't our salvation. The pilot, Berto, beard like a lost forest, glares at my shoulder and at her face and at the mob of reality behind us. "You always bring fireworks to breakfast?" he grunts. "Add it to my bill," I say, shoving Lyra inside. "Don't you die in my cargo," he warns. "Bad for repeat business." "Not today," I promise, and mean it with a faith that makes no sense, and all the sense. The hatch seals. Engines snarl and then sing. The dock drops away like a glove, finally admitting it's a cage. The station shrinks into a ring of light, threaded with police ships and shame. In the cabin's tremor, Lyra braces a hand over my wound, pressing just enough to remind my blood it belongs to me. The pain becomes a border. Inside it, things are clear. "Where?" Berto calls. "Nara," I say. The free moon with its markets that admit the price of things, its newsrooms that drink fire, its clinics that fix what empires break. "You still have a berth?" "For you?" "I have an invoice." He laughs like a man who knows how to cry without witnesses. Lyra leans close, her hair uncommanded, her breath warm with fear turned into steel. The first airlock taught us breath. The balcony taught us pulse. The dome taught us choice. The catwalk teaches us speed. Now the shuttle teaches us promise. "Look at me," she says. I do. The station, the summit, the Dominion, the future. We put them all outside the glass for a handful of seconds. It is enough to claim this moment as ours. You still hold me just as steadily, she murmurs, mouth near my ear like a vow only the wound can hear. Not letting go, I tell her. We don't kiss, we count. 10, for the emergency protocol that first caged us. 9, for the doors that tried to teach us patience. 8, for the drinks that told the truth. 7, for the dome that gave us heat. 6, for the node that chose light over fire. 5, for the shots that learned I fit between her and death. 4, for the catwalk that failed to be a noose. 3, for the hatch that chose us. 2, for the engines learning our names. 1, for the freedom ahead that doesn't know it belongs to people who never planned to deserve it and do anyway. Somewhere behind us, the plaza keeps snowing proof. Somewhere ahead, Nara turns like a coin deciding which face to show. Between them, in a ship that smells like oil and oranges, I choose her again. She chooses me. And while the system writes new orders for our arrest, we write a new rule that refuses capitalization. We leave together,